Hey everyone, my name is Brett. That's really Candleman, and I have with me Mick Kittredge tonight, the CEO and president of Kringle Candle. Mick, thanks for hopping on tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be on here. First time. It's great.
Yeah, really cool. All right, we got some live chat going over there, so let's kick things off. So, let's talk the soy wax, right? Um, so the soy was introduced back in the springtime with the new the Kringle candle line. So what kind of went into that? How long has that thought process been going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot went into it. I've been working on this for about 5 years, and I've been trying to kick around what is going to be the wax that we go forward with for the Kringle line, because I've never honestly been 100% happy with the Kringle Classic collection since we launched. When we first opened back in 2010, we had exclusively single wick candles. So I think it was an 8 ounce and about a 16 ounce jar. Those were our medium and our large. And, they were much narrower than the candles that we have today. And we always got, positive reviews, but everyone said, hey, these aren't as strong as we'd like. And fragrance really comes from the wax pool when the candle's been fully melted and it's vaporizing off the surface. So more surface area, more fragrance evaporation, and you get a stronger candle. So then we redesigned the jars and we created a custom line of 2 wick classic jars and introduced that. And when we had the 2 wicks, they create kind of an interesting dynamic in candle wax. They create problems that you wouldn't have in a single wick, but they also have some benefits. So more fragrance, and that was a good stepping stone for us. But all white candles in modeling paraffin wax is tough. It's tough. You can get it right occasionally with certain fragrances, but you're really limited in what you can do in modeling white paraffin wax. You can't use all the different fragrance ingredients that are available to you because some of them are just really yellow, really dark colored, and you won't end up with a white candle at the end of it. So we were kind of handcuffed for a little while on what kind of fragrance materials we could use. Stability and long-term stability was always an issue for us. So you'd make a candle, it'd go in perfectly white, and then it would sit in a dark box for 6 months in the warehouse while you're selling through your inventory. And then all of a sudden you'd open it up and there'd be, they'd be bright yellow, or they'd have spots, or they'd, have pink going on, crazy reactions, because the paraffin is not really set. It's kind of fluid. It's in motion still. It's a crystalline structure that sets up, and over time, the modeling will start to disappear and it'll start to look clear. Even if you've got a perfectly stable fragrance, the modeling paraffin will start to go kind of translucent. So those were some of my big struggles with doing the Kringle line. It was something new. It was something that no one had really tried to embark on before. All white candles, regardless of the fragrance. And I always wanted to modify the wax blend to be more stable, more shelf stable, from a color change standpoint, burn cleaner, and give off more fragrance. So those were my main goals in finding a new wax. And I probably went through 300 or 400 different versions of waxes, from paraffin soy blends, using 3 to 4 different ingredients. I mean, we analyzed every company's wax in the marketplace. And just because you can have a good wax formula with a certain jar doesn't mean that wax going into a different jar is going to work the same. I mean, every single thing matters when it comes to the candle system. So we finally got to this blend of soy waxes. So it's a couple different waxes that we blend together to get the right melt point. And I was just like, when we discovered this mix, I was just blown away with the burn performance. It was just unbelievable. The flames always stayed at the same height from top to bottom, burned clean, little to zero soot. I mean, I've got one of the new soy waxes that burned top to bottom, no trimming of the wicks. And I mean, it's super clear. I mean, it's hard to see on video, but if you get a little flame through it, I mean, there is no soot in here. And what soot there was, probably from me lighting it with a match going sideways. So I was just blown away with this system. I mean, in fact, I was actually considering doing away with our 2-wick Kringle jars altogether for a little while.
Oh, wow.
That was a consideration. We were looking at a 4-wick version of the Kringle jar. And if you think 2 wicks presents burn problems compared to a single wick, 4 wicks introduced a whole nother level of issues. But this wax seems to work in every single vessel that we put it in. It burns clean. And I actually have an example here of what I've been burning. So I've got 2 of the identical candle fragrance here. So it's iced citrus.
One of my favorites, actually.
And this whole room stinks of iced citrus right now, which I just accidentally blew out one of these wicks. But what you can see is on my right is the paraffin version, and on the left is, well, I can't tell if the soy. This one's the paraffin. So the soy wax melted out in half the time that the paraffin did, and is definitely delivering more fragrance right now. And this one, you kind of start to see the wax pool is starting to change colors a little bit. There's a little bit of tunneling going on. I think that'll correct itself. But these started out, the flames, when these were first lit, similar flame heights. And it just, I believe that the soy corrects a lot of these issues. And I've been really happy with the performance of it so far. But with anything new, you're going to run into some issues with certain fragrances, and we're going to get better as the years go on. We're still developing and redeveloping fragrances to improve the product's performance. But I think that this was a huge step in the right direction for us. Not to mention having the marketing ability to say, yes, we do have a soy candle line and we have a paraffin line. So Country Candle is always going to stay modeling paraffin wax. That's never been a consideration. You really don't have any limitations if you're coloring the wax. So if you've got a dark fragrance oil, just don't make it in a white candle. And that line has always been super strong, done well for us. And now we have the marketing ability to place candles in different stores. If someone says, oh, I want an all natural blend, we've got that for you. If someone says we want a paraffin candle, we've got that for you. If someone wants a 3-wick that's a paraffin soy blend, we've got that for you. So we're a manufacturer of all different kinds of candles.
Good. So now you have the 2 examples there of iced citrus. So did you have to modify the oils for the soy wax versus the paraffin blend?
Some of them, yes. Not all of them. So every fragrance is going to kind of react a little different in the soy compared to paraffin. So paraffin is a very linear structure of carbon molecules that allows the fragrance to, escape it a little differently than soy does. Soy is a little bit more encapsulating. So when we made the shift from paraffin to soy in the classic line, we increased the fragrance percentage per ounce of wax by 40%. So we've gone up in fragrance drastically in the new wax. So that really helps bring out some of the fragrance. But in some cases, you do need to tweak the fragrances and their solvent systems in order to have better evaporation.
Okay. So now here's one of the new ones here. Now, so you see the wicks are all the way to the top there. Now, do you recommend trimming the wicks on first burn, or just let them go the way they are?
Honestly, I think you can just let them go. So a couple things, like I've got one here too, and this one was a little bit overfilled. This one was a lab pour, but the wicks being long is more of a factor for production. So when they're being made, we have these little rings that go on top of the jar that hold the wicks in place so that they don't, flop over. Mm-hmm. And sometimes what happens is if you've got someone new in there trimming wicks, if they aren't paying attention and they start trimming them too low, then when you go to fill the candle a second time and top it, they could actually fill over the wicks, which is problematic. And then obviously that candle is scrap. So keeping the wicks a little longer is just a safety precaution so that we don't have that happen in production. But all of these wicks, you can just light them right up and they will flake off and self-trim right back down to the correct height for this candle. Okay.
And then speaking of wicks there, so are the wicks different for the soy wax in general than the paraffin blends?
We developed a new wick, and it's a 100% cotton wick. It's a flat braid, but what was really challenging and was probably one of the biggest feats that I think we overcame with making a soy candle is this particular wick. A lot of flat braids, they curl. And you'll notice that there is a little bit of a curl to the wick. It's kind of a self-trimming mechanism. So the wick starts to curl, but what can happen with soy is carbon can start to form on the tip of the wick. And if it's not sturdy enough, and if the braid doesn't hold up, what can happen is the wick can actually curl and touch down into the wax pool from the tip of the wick and create kind of a U shape. That's really bad for candles. It can cause them to get too hot, get to flash point. It can cause the wax pool to get really murky. And this wick, my biggest feat with it was designing it so that it had enough rigidity while still being a flat braid to never do that. So we've really rarely ever seen that happen in this blend. And you can trim the wicks mid burn if you get a little carbon buildup on the top. In 9 out of 10 cases, I don't ever trim my wicks on the soy. I just light the end, and it's fine. I find if you don't trim your wick, it's going to melt out a little faster and start delivering fragrance a little bit quicker. You're not going to have it sitting. It's just not going to smoke. You might like a second or two, but that's about it.
And so, so shelf life, right? You said paraffin has longer shelf life. What shelf life can we expect from these soy candles? You know, if we buy them, are they going to be good in 2-3 years from now to still give us a good aroma throw, performance?
I would say absolutely. I mean, the companies that we're buying the different components from this, they give a shelf life when it's liquid. So we buy it in liquid bulk. We have a big tank that we bring it in, we blend it, and then we pour. All of the shelf life issues come from when it's being heated and stored under temperature at about 160 degrees. And so that's when it starts to oxidize and things like that. But cold and in the jar with the fragrance oil, you should be good for years.
Okay. And now, what's the process and the plan really to convert, like, I know Eric had a question here about he can't wait to get Christmas in a soy wax jar. When can we see that? Are we going to see that?
All of the fragrances in the Kringle line are currently being produced in the new soy. So once July, August timeframe happened, that was our line in the sand that we were not going to produce any more of the existing fragrances in paraffin. So as inventory changes out, you will start to see all of the lineup being made in soy. So I believe this year Christmas absolutely is shipping in soy. I just saw Cozy Cabin come off the belt about last week. Atkins Cider Donut, most of them that are, you know, mainstays in the line are now in stock in soy. So people will start to see that happening.
Okay, and so the 3 wicks, they're still a paraffin soy blend.
Correct.
Are they going to stay that way?
They will stay that way. Absolutely. So that's our 3 different types of candle product, really, is what you're going to see. You're going to see the 3 wicks stay the same. You're going to see modeling paraffin in the Country line, and then 100% soy in the Kringle line.
Okay. All right, let's see. And the burn times are going to be about the same from the paraffin to the soy wax?
So here's the thing. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. They are changing a little bit, but the soy is a lot denser than paraffin. So burn times are a real difficult thing to get 100% accurate. That's why every company gives a range of burn times, because if you've got a fragrance like this in paraffin, that if you could see the flames here, let me see if I can get it, little tiny flames, well, that's not consuming at a very high rate. But it's also not, let's see if you can see this from the top down. Let's see, here we go. You can now, sorry, I keep accidentally blowing them out with the wax pool. Those are not consuming at a very high rate, right? But you're also not getting a lot of performance out of the candle when the flames are really small. So I look at a candle kind of like a car. So it's like an engine. So what's happening here? You've got the flame, and if you had a thermal gun and you could see the heat coming off of the candle, the heat from the candle is what's making the fragrance plume out. So it's evaporating off the surface and heat rises. If you had a thermal gun, you would see this plume of heat just billowing out of the candle. And you can kind of test that and see that theory by having a match and blowing it out and just holding the smoking match near the candle. You're going to see how fast the heat's like rising and pluming off into the area. So with a small little flame, you're not getting the throw and the performance out of the candle that you would out of a healthy flame candle like we have with the soy. So consumption on this is going to be probably a little bit quicker. but you're going to get the performance faster because it's going to melt out sooner on every single burn. So you're not having to wait that 2+ hours before you get a full wax pool that you're literally wasting burn time just to get it to start to throw. But it's going to consume at a more even pace. So the paraffin starts consuming really fast at the beginning, big flames, big performance at the beginning. Then they start to shrink in about the 1/3 of the way down the jar. You start to get the smaller flames. And then as the heat retention starts to build, as the flames are going further down inside the jar, it's heating up the wax pool, which is making the fuel less viscous and more easily to flow through the wick. Then you start to get bigger flames again towards the end of the jar. So it's this weird heat, fuel, oxygen triangle that changes from top to bottom on every candle system. You just don't get that with the soy. It's a much more linear burn. So in my opinion, yes, it's gonna consume a little bit quicker. However, you're gonna have more hours that it's giving you full fragrance performance.
Okay.
And I blew out the candle again on accident.
I saw a question here about how the fragrances are considered natural for the new soy wax.
Say that one more time.
It says, please talk about how the fragrances are considered natural for the new candles. So I guess you had mentioned before about the soy wax being an all-natural blend.
Yep. So the soy wax is an all-natural blend, and all of our fragrances, from Kringle, the country candle, to the soy blend, they all use a mixture of natural and synthetic ingredients in the fragrances, and that's just standard in the candle industry. If you were going to be doing, say, an aromatherapy line, and you're going to use pure lavender oil, for instance, and you use only lavender oil, first of all, this candle would be about $100 if you're going to use pure lavender oil. But it will smell when it burns like kerosene. It just smells, in my opinion, terrible. So natural citruses, natural florals, in a lot of cases, give off a really unnatural smell when they burn. So balancing them with a mixture of solvent systems helps encapsulate the fragrance and bring out its true nature. So it's a little bit of both. Some of them have more natural ingredients than others, but all candle companies across the board use a mixture.
Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. So I have burned candles from other companies that the kerosene, I do get the kerosene smell.
Yep.
So that's interesting to see where that actually comes from there.
It's interesting. If you made that same thing and you put it in a wax melt, you wouldn't get that smell. It's only from the actual burning of the oils. So it's kind of just a problem that the candle industry has, and nobody likes that smell. A lot of people will refer to it as cat pee as well. A lot of people think that that's what that smell is. I've heard in the groups, oh, this one smells like cat pee. That's the natural burning, from what I found.
Okay. Someone here would like to, if you could explain the differences between the country candle and the Kringle candle line.
Sure. Hold on. I've got a country candle right here. Burning our old blueberry lemonade. My girlfriend is going to school and using this table, so she always burns a candle out here. She's going to nursing school right now, so all of her books and her stuff are over there.
Oh,
country candle is a classic modeling paraffin wax, so it's a straight cut, pure paraffin wax that's colored, uses a high concentration of fragrance oils, and it's really our family's original recipe, with the exception that we put 2 wicks in it instead of 1 wick. Yeah, my family's been making this style jar since the 60s. So my dad started Yankee Candle. He made his first candle in the basement, and the rest is kind of history, I suppose. And Kringle is now it is an all-natural soy wax, 2 wicks, different aesthetic to the jar, straight cylinders, a little foot on the bottom, matching lid, and soy wax. So it really is just a personal preference in terms of your taste and style. I like them both very much, and we're just here to offer options.
There you go.
I hope that answered the question.
I think it did. So I want to switch over to Halloween real quick, because Halloween has been huge for you guys for the past 3 years. So really, you made them back in 2012 to 2014. I think you had 3 years original there. So what happened that they got discontinued for so many years, and what brought them back after a 7-year hiatus?
Well, the first year we made them, we went pretty big with our production on them. So we made them, they were made in our original classic 8.5 ounce single wicks. They were much smaller. And then I think we also might have made them in our taller 622 jar, but I'm not 100% certain.
I think I have a 5 ounce colored jar.
Okay. So we made them in a few different versions of that, sold them at retail and in wholesale around the country, and nobody bought them. If I'm being honest, like we just didn't sell through them. So we made them 1 year and they just didn't do all that well. And then all of a sudden, I think there were a few reviews that came up online, and Witch's Cauldron kind of became this cult following of a fragrance for Halloween. And we started getting requests for it. And we didn't take it all that seriously at first. I think maybe we just didn't market it properly or didn't have it in time for the wholesale market to get it on their shelves and have enough selling time before Halloween. It's just, in candle world, it's always difficult to be on time with everything. You know, there's so many different ingredients and so many people and things that have to kind of come all together to make the final product. And inevitably, the fragrance houses that are making the fragrances for us, you know, are late or something ends up happening, and it takes a little bit longer to get production made. So I think that might have been the hurdle the first few years, but then people just started asking for it, and I started saying, you know, let's give this a try. Let's redesign it. So I went to the drawing board and redesigned everything a few years ago, teased it out into a few of the candle groups, and people seemed to really like the idea of it coming back. And the first few years, like, I mean, we were literally hand painting these jars. I was up until 4 a.m. one night with a friend of mine painting these jars.
Wow.
It was like the worst thing ever to have to do. We're in a spray booth and we've got all these, like, you know, gas masks on, and we're in there spraying jars. And a friend of mine owned the company that had the spray booth. He let us use it that year, and he was like, "You guys are crazy. Like, what are you doing?" But anyway, it worked out. We really nailed it. The painting now, so we've got that. You know, first year I think we had some jars that had like lines in them at the bottom, like the paint kind of didn't adhere perfectly, but worked out some of the kinks. And it's just like every company, you know, you make progress, right?
Exactly. That's good. So I guess we're gonna see more Kringle Candle Halloween next year, since it was already huge.
Absolutely.
Last year.
You know, we always, for the last few years, we have run into supply issues. So the first year we made them, they were sold out instantly, and people were really upset that we didn't have enough to ship. And we weren't anticipating that kind of a response. And there was no way for us to react to it because we didn't have enough jars on hand to then take them immediately and go back up and schedule time in the paint booth and actually paint them, and then order the fragrance that's going to take 4 weeks to come in. And, you know, it was just too close to Halloween, because the day after Halloween, everyone starts decorating for Christmas. So we didn't have enough time to react. So the next year, we more than doubled our capacity on the production, and it still wasn't enough. And next year, we're going to more than double it again, and I'm really hoping that we'll have enough to make everybody happy. I know the one that was really popular this year was Sleepy Hollow, and I was guessing that one would be a big one, and that one was just gone before you could even try to get one. I mean, like, I was watching the online sale when we first launched, and I was just absolutely shocked. I mean, we were sold out first night. It's like people were sitting there waiting to buy the jars. Yeah. We've got people selling them on eBay now for like $75.
Oh my gosh!
I remember Unicorn Poop was really the big one. That was probably our largest crazy viral fragrance that ever happened. I mean, you had people actually selling them on eBay for $250, 10 times what they paid for the thing.
How did that concept come up? I have one. How did that concept come up? Was that just like a whim? It was like, let's do a candle?
You know, unicorns were going kind of crazy for a little while. They were on everything. I think I went to a movie and I saw Cinemark had like a funny unicorn ad in one of them. And I'm just sitting there, and I was on one of the forums. I think I was in Candle Dancers group, and somebody posted something. I like to tease things, and I made a joke. Like my graphic artist and I stumbled across a unicorn photo when we were looking for stuff for the following year. And I just had him do a digital rendering and I posted it as a total joke. And people were like, no, I want this. I said, okay, if I get 100 people to commit to doing a pre-order, I'll make it. And that was the birth of the pre-order also, because it was like, I didn't think anyone was actually serious, that they would actually buy it. I thought it was kind of a joke. So I was like, okay, well, we'll do this thing. We'll make it a side thing. And if people end up pre-ordering it, fine, I'll make it. And we sold thousands of them within 48 hours. I mean, we had to cancel the pre-order. I mean, we didn't have enough time in production to be able to actually do it, even with the pre-order. We just didn't have, our production is booked out, and we produce candles for many major other candle companies' brands. So we're not only just producing our own candles, we also are contract filling. I can't talk about who we make for, but we make some for a lot of different brands out there. And our belt time is precious. And that's also why, we don't have enough time to just, if orders come in, we're out of stock on stuff because we can't even schedule our own brands online sometimes, because when you're making candles for other companies, you take that really seriously. And if people have an order in, I'm not going to delay their stuff. I'm going to delay our stuff because that's our problem, not their problem. So we try to be good stewards of our production for everybody, and that's how we do it.
So you came up with the name and the candle, but did the scent come afterwards?
The scent came afterwards. I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? These people want this. What do I make it smell like? So we went through probably 5 or 6 different versions of unicorn poop before we landed on the one. And I think it came out pretty good. It's like a cotton candy, sweet, sticky, blue raz kind of a fragrance. And I'm hoping to remake it again because I think people would like to be able to buy it one more time. It'll be a different version of the label. So it's not, killing the value of everybody's collection.
There you go. Make some limited edition Halloween ones. Number them or something.
That's a good idea. Numbered. All right.
Numbered. Will we see some country candle Halloween next year?
Yes. Country candle will definitely be happening next year. Knock on wood. We would have done it this year, except we're in a glass crisis right now. There is an unbelievable glass crisis that is hitting every candle maker out there right now. We were just shut off. We are not going to be able to buy any more country jars this year. So what we have in-house is what we've got. COVID really hit the glass industry really pretty hard. And a couple of the major manufacturers in the United States went through some hard times prior to COVID. So one of the major ones that makes our Kringle jars actually declared bankruptcy, and they had to go through a restructuring, and they are still around and they still make candle jars, but that happened right before COVID. So their capacity to produce jars went way down prior to COVID. Then demand spiked like crazy because of the delay in the supply chains, and they just can't make enough glass jars to meet the demand. So they're trying to, give everybody a little bit and keep everybody moderately happy, but we're in some pretty tough times with raw materials, probably for another 2 years. That's how long the delay is being estimated. So wax, glass, wicks have been a troublesome one for us, and some fragrances, depending on where the raw materials in the world they're coming from, have also been crazy. I mean, prices are skyrocketing. Our country candle jars have gone up by 150%. So almost 3 times what I was paying for them a year ago. And the demand is just insane. Like, even though we're paying 3 times for the jar what we used to, you still can't get them. It's crazy. I don't want to bore you guys with all of the
right
issues, but it is really challenging.
So that would explain the minor price increase we saw the other day.
I wouldn't call it minor. It was a pretty big one. But
the country jars, $4 on those.
Yeah, I think $350 on that one, right? So it went from $24 to $28.50, and it's a challenge. We launched the country jar at what I would consider a promotional price point to encourage people to try it, because I was really excited to get this into the marketplace. It was kind of like a nod to my father a little bit. You know, he passed a few years ago, and I've always kind of had a thing for history and his judge. And you can see there's a lot of Yankee Candle heritage on this wall. This is my history wall. And I wanted to make it better. You know, I was hearing a lot of complaints in the marketplace about, you know, they're not as strong as they used to be and this and that. Anyway, so I was really excited to get it out there. So I wanted to put it and price it at a point where people would be excited to try it out, because it was, I would say it was underpriced for the industry. You know, at that time you were looking at a Yankee comparison with 2 ounces less fill for, I think they were going at $27.99 at that point, and then they went up to $28.50, and then $29.50, and then $31 now. Mm-hmm. You know, wax prices in the last year have tripled as well. Glass prices have tripled. The cost of hiring people has gone up dramatically. It's hitting pretty hard. So, you know, candle companies are going to have to adjust, and you're going to see it across the board on every single company at some point. It's just, when does it happen? We tried to hold out as long as we could. I was really hopeful that a lot of these raw material prices would be temporary, but when we got the new prospectus out that this was going to be more like a 2-year period, that was unsustainable for us. We were not going to be able to continue down the path that we were going with the prices and stay in business. So that was really what we had to do.
Okay. And so over the past 2 years, you guys have released a lot of like collections, and I'm a huge fan of collections, the themed collections, right? So you had the donut collection there. You had the Zen, you have the farmhouse collection there. So what kind of prompted you to, and farmhouse, Zen, and bougie, you know, the great collections, I think they launched at the wrong time, because it was right when COVID hit. Yep. They didn't get like what they deserved, I think. So yeah, what kind of what prompted you to go down collections just from the standard holiday and fall releases and the core collection?
This needs a little show and tell, so let me grab something quick to explain this. 1 second. All right, I'm back.
Okay.
So I wanted to show the original Kringle candle look. I don't know if everybody is familiar with this, but this is what, can you see? There it is, kind of.
Sort of. Yep.
Okay, there we go. So this was what we started with, and it's beautiful, and it has its place, absolutely. But every single thing every fragrance was an isolate image. So it had to be photographed on a white background so that it would work with the rest of the label. You've got your branding up here, the fragrance name, highly fragrant candle, and Kringle Candle Company. Lots going on there. And they looked great, but they were incredibly limiting in terms of what you could design for fragrances. They had to be something. They had to be a thing that could be on the label and sitting in there. It was very difficult to do fantasy fragrances, experiential destination fragrances, and that's what made me want to redesign the Kringle label. And there was a version in between where we started to do images that kind of faded to white on the bottom. I think Tranquil Waters was one of the first ones that we kind of attempted an experiential destination fragrance, and it still had that look where it faded to the bottom to white. And then I said, you know what, this is just too limiting. There's too many beautiful like things that we could put on labels to really give you an idea of what the fragrance should smell like, that I wanted to redesign. So that's when we kind of completely changed and went to the more this look. So it's full image all the way to the edge. We've trapped the fragrance name in a box so that you can read it. But this really opened up the palette to fragrance design, to label design, and took the handcuffs off the design team, basically. So I'm a creative guy. I do all the label art. I come up with the fragrances. I create the collections, and labels to some extent can be limiting also. So I wanted to branch out and design new things and have new looks, and being confined to a square box, always fitting in the same shape, you know, you can get a little bored as a designer doing that. So the collections allowed me to launch something new, a completely different look with no restrictions. That I can literally stretch my creative wings and just kind of come up with whatever I wanted, and it doesn't have to exist on a shelf next to everything else and still look right. We used to really sell a lot of candles in a hutch program, so everything had to be top to bottom, same fragrance, this one, that one, that, it was very organized and on a shelf, and you really couldn't deviate from anything. Even if you change the label a little bit, the retailers were like, well, now I need every one of my labels changed. Send me new labels for all the ones that I've already got stock of, and it was just a nightmare. So collections allowed us to branch out and try new things. So I'm really excited about all the different collections, and I've got a lot more coming for next year. So there's going to be one holiday release coming soon that's going to be pretty cool. Originally, it was going to be in the country jar, but we had to swap it to a 3-wick jar because we couldn't get enough country jars.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, it's going to be one of those painted ones. So we do the designs kind of like the blueberries that's on the jar, not a label.
Right. Okay. So like, how do you guys do the labels on like the Zen collection and even like the blueberry donut collection there? Those are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I really like how we designed those ones. We're the only candle company doing it, and I can't give too much away. But it is painted directly onto the glass digitally. So it's going into a machine, and we paint it on one jar at a time, and it gets cured onto the glass, and that design is on there for the most part, unless something goes wrong with the pre-treatment. You can dishwash it when you're done, and that really stays on there. But this new system has given us some really interesting freedoms where it's not a label. It's not, if you want a full wrap design, you don't have a seam on the back. It's not going to melt like some of the Bath & Body Works shrink sleeves that go around the edges of the jars that can get too hot and kind of melt if the wicks get too close to the edge. It's on there. I think it elevates the aesthetic of the jar. And you can do some really interesting creative designs with transparencies and raised lettering and varnishes. It's pretty neat. It's a pretty neat design. I can't go into too much because everybody else can do it if I do that.
Typical there. So any plans? I know like last year you had in the country jars, you were able to bring back some limited editions, like Salt Mist Rose, archives, things like that. Any plans to create like a returning favorites, have you? Absolutely. I know archives. Folks want archives. I've seen it a few times in here.
It's funny. I couldn't sell that thing while it was in the line. That was like one of the worst sellers that year when we released it. But it has, like Witch's Cauldron, kind of come back around and become kind of like a cult favorite. But absolutely, we're going to re-release them. It's just when can we get the belt time and the production time right now? We're fully booked for a little while, and we're going to start reintroducing them. You're going to see a slew of fragrances for next year. Next year, we have more fragrances that we're going to be launching than we've ever launched before, and we got some really exciting new designs.
Yeah, I think someone in here recommended a mermaid collection for next summer.
That's a nice idea. I like that. All right, I'm going to have to put some thought into that. I know Village did a really nice mermaid fragrance that people really liked. All right, I'll have to look into that.
Peppermint cocoa. Eric wants peppermint cocoa.
It's a good one. That's a good one. We've got a nice new peppermint candy cane that I think you reviewed last week.
Yeah, very nice. It was very nice there as well.
Got a little bit of chocolate next to it, like you were saying, a little white chocolate in there. So that's a good one. If I bring back peppermint cocoa, the production team might kill me. That was one of those that they hated because it was so strong in the factory. It was like making their eyes water. It's funny how certain people, like when you're making the candles, like everybody has their favorites in the factory, and then there's others that they just like glare at you when they have to make it. Like, I hate this fragrance. But,
I can imagine that was like when you had the candle shop candle in country.
Yep, that's a big one. That one was strong. That one was very strong.
So what is the process of creating a scent? So right now, you said you're already working on next year's stuff. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of walk us through how you create a scent, and then does the name come first? Does the label come first? How do you go? What's the process?
It's interesting. Everybody does it a little differently. And I have gotten into trouble with fragrance development because if you if you get too attached to a process in fragrance development, you could wind up at the end of the road and have nothing. So let's say that I was designing a new candle and I found an image and I said, you know what, this is just the greatest looking image and I want to design a fragrance for this. I come up with a name, I have the image, and we agree that, hey, we're going to launch this one, and we start developing the fragrance, and then all of a sudden you just can't get it to smell right. You can't get it to burn right. The flames are going out halfway through the burn. There's problems. You just can't get too attached to the process. So for me, I use all different directions to create the fragrances. Sometimes we create the fragrance first and we say, boy, this is really fantastic. We've got to create a concept and an image around it, and we go backwards. And then there's other times that we create the concept, develop the fragrance. And then there's other times where some of the perfumers that we work with will present an idea and say, hey, I think this is a really good one. And it goes all different directions. There is no rhyme or reason to how we do it. It's just get it done and get as many developed so that we can bring it to market.
Sounds good there. I think I saw here. So what is your favorite fragrance? Are you allowed to have a favorite fragrance?
I don't know. Do you have a favorite child? Right.
Not supposed to, right?
Yeah, not supposed to. I go through phases. I'm partial to Christmas. I really like our Christmas fragrance. I'm only allowed to burn it in our house after October because my girlfriend is a huge Christmas lover, and if she smells Christmas and Christmas is too far away, it'll make her sad and wish that Christmas were here sooner. So she bans all Christmas music, any movie that has a reference to Christmas, and any Christmas candles in the house for a certain time of year. So I only get it from October until the end of the year. But that's one of my tops. I like gray, aqua. Splash was a great one. Really enjoyed that one. And Far, Far Away. I really enjoy that one. Yeah. Love the apple scents. Boy, that's a tough one. I find that I have to like all fragrances. So, I'm typically, before I became a chandler, I may not have gravitated towards rose fragrances, for instance. But I find my favorite rose, and I develop to, if I had to create a rose fragrance, I'm finding and creating, in my opinion, the best rose that we can create. So I find something to love about all of them.
Good. Someone here said, is Cozy Christmas coming back?
Yes, I believe it will be.
Christmas Stroll is a favorite. Christmas Stroll might actually be my favorite, one of my favorite fragrances. So is it true that this is one of the last fragrances your dad really created?
Yeah, it was definitely, I think that was a 2010 release. He wanted to develop a fragrance that was modeled after Nantucket's Christmas Stroll, which is the first week in December, and everybody kind of shows up and walks the streets, and it's a very social time. And he loved going to Nantucket, so everybody puts up Christmas trees on the main strip, and there's everybody mulling cider and all that. So he wanted to create a fragrance that kind of reminded him of that. So that was definitely one of them. If I had to say what the last one was, it was probably one called Provence, and I hated that fragrance. It was just it was awful in my opinion. However, certain people loved it. It was a mixture of lavender, honey, orange, and thyme, and it was very strong. So it was like one of those that, you have that in the far end of the house and you'll smell it walking in the door like crazy. But it had its place, but I would say that was probably the last one.
And Blue Spruce, is that coming back at all?
We were just talking about Blue Spruce. I saw a comment the other day about it, and I had this new pine fragrance that we were kind of working on for next year, and it had it's an image of pine boughs kind of spread out like this on a table, and it has a blue background, like a blue metallic kind of background to it. And it was going to be a new fragrance, but we decided we're going to relaunch Blue Spruce instead because it was going to be a similar one, and I saw that everybody wanted Blue Spruce back, so we're going to bring that back next year in the country line.
In the country line, cool. So when you create the new holiday collection, a new spring collection, how do you balance out? Like, do you try to do a certain number of gourmands, a certain number of fresh fragrances? What's the thinking? What's the thought behind that? Is there a thought behind that?
There is absolutely a thought behind it. You got to have something for everybody. So I try to balance between florals and gourmands and fresh and experiential and destination. It's a delicate mix. Sometimes it really depends on the trend that you're going with. But I always try to have a mixture of fragrances that someone will be able to find something that they like. But that's tough. It's tough to please everybody. You're just not going to please everybody. Everybody smells things differently. And at the end of the day, it's a very subjective world that we live in the candle world. It's all about your individual experience with it. So we try to branch out and keep something for everybody.
Okay. Any thoughts of maybe keeping, say, like Sleepy Hollow or Witch's Cauldron available year round? Would that be feasible? Would that be possible?
It's an interesting idea. Do you think that people would want to buy a Halloween-inspired candle year-round, or should we create a new look and image for it that wasn't Halloween-based?
Right.
So, for instance, we did Fraser Fir in the Country line. It was a white jar with kind of like a paint look, and that's Christmas. Dead ringer, same oil, that's Christmas. So it was like, how can we do one that's not going to be overtly holiday, so that if you wanted to burn Christmas year round, you could have something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting to think about.
What's everybody think? Should we
see? Bonnie says yes. Queen of the Girl Geeks, Bonnie.
So is that a yes to doing the Halloween label, or is that a yes to rebranding? Let's see.
John says he could do poison apple year round.
That's a good idea. So we are going to do a new apple next year. So I don't know if you saw, I teased the idea of doing a black line. And,
yeah, I was going to ask you about that, especially that cheeseburger fragrance or whatever that is.
Yeah, that was an interesting idea. Sometimes, you just got to throw stuff at the wall and see how people like. I mean, if I told you we were going to make a poop scented candle and have it be our best seller that year, you wouldn't have believed me, but then we did it with unicorn poop, and all of a sudden,
there it is.
People do some crazy stuff. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow has come out with a few interesting ones.
Yeah.
Well, out like crazy. So sometimes you just got to push the boundaries of what's acceptable in a candle. But yes, we are going to do the black line, and I'm really excited about it. We just ordered all the labels, and I think we've got like 30 or more that are coming out, and actually 45 different fragrances that will launch in the black line. And it's only going to be available in one size jar, the large Kringle jar. It'll be basically a dead ringer for the Halloween line, same paint, and it'll be a black style label. But they're going to be really interesting, unique fragrances that won't be spooky per se. You can burn them year round. That's the idea. So we do have the apple one, and we're going to do the poison apple in a different branding for that one.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people here say they would like Halloween year round. Some say yes, rebrand. Some say no.
Well, it's definitely a good idea. So let me do some thinking and see about, maybe I can sneak some into the black line that's got a new label, and it really depends on if we can come up with a good concept for it.
Yeah. So, all right, someone here said about Half Moon Rising. That was actually Bad Moon Rising, I think Sonny is talking about.
Yep.
And I know I've asked you about that before, to bring that back. I don't know if there's still a record of it somewhere. Or...
Oh, we definitely have a record of it. Yeah. That one was very floral. It was a Wolfsbane floral fragrance. So, Wolfsbane was actually. Oh wait, no. Excuse me. I'm confusing the two. I was thinking Wolfsbane. I think Bad Moon Rising was a very similar fragrance to Midnight. That was like Drakkar.
Okay, I never smelled it, so I can't.
I'm pretty sure that was like a Drakkar version, which we still currently make as Midnight in the Country line. Very similar, I believe. Someone's going to call them out and say that you're wrong, Mick. You should know this. Like, sorry, I've done about 1,000 fragrances. Hard to remember them all, but I try.
A couple people here said tomato vine scents. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I love tomato vine fragrances.
I've done like a dozen samples and had them like almost launching. Every year we'll wind up with 50 fragrances that we're gonna do in Kringle, and then whittle it down to 18. And that has been a top contender for the last 3 years, but has always gotten cut right before the end because it just didn't quite fit in with the rest of it. But I agree. I have some really fantastic tomato vine fragrances that are just like you're sticking your face in a hot tomato plant that's out in the garden, just like really ripe and viney. And I really like them. So you will absolutely see one of those in the not so distant future.
Okay,
The other
great.
thing we'll see next year is all of the country candle fragrances in 3 wicks. So that's something.
In a traditional 3-wick jar like this, or the 3-wick you were teasing before?
That one.
This one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
3 wicks, metal lid, and I don't think I was teasing anything else earlier, was I?
You well, on Instagram a while ago, you had a 3-wick country jar you were looking at.
Yes. No. So this is going to be 3-wick traditional, just like this. Yeah.
In the soy paraffin blend?
Correct.
Okay.
So mega performers. They're very strong. So.
And someone said barn board. Bring back barn board.
I saw that one actually did really well when we brought it back. That'll definitely be coming back. So limited editions, what we're going to do is when we get enough line time, we're going to have the orders for the labels already in. We've got them in-house. When we get the time to be able to slide it into production, we're going to make them. And they'll be in and they'll be out. So when you get a notification that they're there, grab them while you can.
Grab them. I'm going to go back to the soy wax real quick because I had a question. So is it a myth or is it true that soy needs cure time?
We don't develop any of them for a cure time. So when we make the candles, we are making them in the lab. The next day we're burning them and evaluating them. So there is no cure time for us in our development process. Some people think that they get stronger as they cure. I absolutely would say that all candles from a cold throw perspective will cure and become stronger the more time that they remain lidded. So what's happening is the fragrance will evaporate off the surface of the wax, stay in the jar, and then they will season the exterior of the interior of the lid and the surrounding walls. And I believe you will get a stronger cold throw the longer the candle sits. Now, it's tough to say. I've seen people turn country jars and Yankee jars upside down, and they believe that will the oils to the top. And they're not wrong about that. I mean, storing them upside down certainly will create some effect. Whether or not that's enough to change the performance, I think, is totally on a individual basis. We don't store them upside down in our facility to do that, but I can't say that it won't help. You will see fragrance migration through paraffin over time, and it will settle to the bottom, but just like this one, you'll see there's a little bit of oil around the bottoms. But if you knew how much fragrance actually went into this, you would know that residue in between the jar and the wax is minute in comparison to the total amount of fragrance that's in the candle. So it does help to some extent.
Eric said something here about the wicks in the 3 wicks. He had some in the early days, but I guess he had mixed results.
Okay.
In that there. So, have there been any improvements or different wicks used in the 3-wick candles?
We are constantly improving. We've been making them for years now. We get very good results with our blend. But what I can say is that across the board, from all companies that make 3 wicks, you're going to run into diminishing flames in certain fragrances. And it's just hard to get a multi-wick candle system to burn top to bottom completely, perfectly, evenly, and deliver the crazy amount of fragrance that people want out of a 3-wick. So you're loading them at a high percentage of fragrance, and the fragrance is the hardest thing in the candle to burn. If you had no fragrance, you could make the perfect candle every single time. It's the fragrance oil that is really the odd man out, that every single batch is different, because the manufacturers that work with us to create our formulas will get different raw materials from all over the world. So you might be getting cinnamon from Madagascar this one time, and then you might be getting it from a completely different location the next. And the natural part of the fragrance varies dramatically, and it's the iron content from the soil that the natural ingredients are grown from that is the inhibiting factor to candles burning. So what happens is the iron will wind up clogging the wick, and you'll get the flames, getting real small, and that's really the biggest issue. And a lot of candle companies have a tough time getting consistent burns from batch to batch because they're not doing quality control with the production oil prior to burn. They're not doing quality control with the production batch of fragrance oil before they make it. Why is that important? But it's also incredibly time consuming. You have to be able to make a candle with the jug of oil that you've ordered and gotten in, that you've already tested with a lab version before you slot it into production. And you might have a 6-week lead time on the fragrance, and then you might have a couple weeks in order to make the candle, burn the candle top to bottom, reevaluate it. If there is a problem, change the wick, burn it again. It just delays production weeks and weeks and weeks, and a lot of companies can't wait that long to get them produced. We do pre-production burning on just about everything that we make, so we really try to hone in on that perfect wick for that specific batch of fragrance oil every single time. And that's a tough feat, and it's not something that, geez, if we grow dramatically like we did and we keep going, that might be difficult to keep up forever. But I've noticed a huge benefit to doing it.
Good. Now, when you test, is there do you have certain rooms that you test in, or is it just one giant room for the burns rather?
So in our lab, we've got a burn room, which is about 3,000 square feet, and you might see 500 candles burning at any given time, spread out with enough space, and we have an enormous air conditioning system to keep the heat down in there, because the room temperature can't climb too much, because then that completely changes how the candle burns. If the room is 80 versus 69, that is a totally different environment for the candle to be burning in, and you might not see the issues for the average home at 72 degrees. So we burn in there, and then we do fragrance evaluations in separate rooms that are clean rooms. All the walls are in that kind of plastic material that can be wiped down and washed down, drains on the floor, and an individual HVAC system for each room. And we'll burn one candle in a room that might be 1,000 square feet, do a large room evaluation of that. How does the candle perform at the beginning of the burn, maybe halfway through the candle, and then at the end, just to see how the fragrance performance varies throughout the burn. And then we have small tournament burn-in booths that are about 300 square feet to kind of match a bathroom. And we do a lot of volume through those rooms, because we can flip a switch and exhaust all the air out of the burn booths within about a minute, and then we can move on to the next fragrance. So that's kind of how we keep things going fast, and we get an initial test in there, and then we'll move it to the big booths.
It's impressive. Interesting. So someone here asked, when creating candles, is there a scent or oil you add to maximize the throw? Like a scent booster, maybe? Is that the question? Well,
that is not something that we add. If anything, we would modify the fragrance's performance. And so what are you looking at here? You've got, in a fragrance oil, you have resins, crystals, absolutes, and oils that are all mixed together to create the fragrance oil. And they need a carrying agent to solubilize all those different types of materials into one. So you've got things that are very sticky and tar-like, sap materials coming out of trees, and an absolute is a alcohol extraction. So things like rose petals that are very delicate, you would put in through an absolute process. You've got extractions that are, the oils that are, kind of like a still. You would put lavender in a still almost, and boil it and extract the oils from a distilling process. You've got vanillin crystals, which are, a high melt point crystalline structure. So it's these little tiny vanilla crystals, and that's challenging to get into the blend. So you've got to have a carrying oil that will take all these different materials and blend them into an oil that'll be acceptable to go into the candle wax. So that is really the thing that you're talking about, is the solvent system that gets the fragrance material to kind of blend together and go into the candle. That is an adjustable thing for different flash points. So it's getting very technical here, but flash points on the fragrances vary dramatically. Citruses, for instance, like a lemon oil, has a very low flash point. I think it's like 115 degrees, which means that if that oil got up to 115 degrees, it could maintain a flame without a wick. It could just be on fire. Gasoline is a very low flash point as well. So that's challenging in a candle, because obviously you don't want the candle to be all on fire. And you have to monitor that flash point. So you add things to the fragrance oil to bring the flash point up. But if you bring the flash point up too high, then it's not evaporating off the surface of the wax, and you're not getting good performance and throw. So there's a balancing factor of the flash points of all the different materials so that you can get a nice performance on all of the different products. I saw someone commented Vibar. Yeah, we don't really use Vibar in any of the products. It's a polymer. We use it in very, very small increments in our daylight formula and our wax melt formula. But in the candle burning part, we find that it kind of encapsulates some of the fragrance, and it completely changes the chemical makeup of the wax, so it changes the look of the wax. So if you added Vibar to, say, a modeling paraffin candle, it would go completely translucent, and you'd lose all the kind of crackly look. And if you added it to the soy, well, then it wouldn't be 100% soy, and it'll completely change the look of how it sticks to the jar. But I've found that that helps keep the fragrance into the wax, but it doesn't help get the fragrance out when it's burning.
Gotcha. Okay, this has been awesome. I think we're going to wrap it up soon here. Let's get some more questions coming in here. Someone said, a couple people said, will you guys be offering Afterpay on your website anytime soon?
It's been considered. We've actually looked at it, so I don't have a definitive answer yet, but we're looking into it. It's definitely something we would consider if that's something people would like.
We have the holiday collection launches Friday.
Yeah.
Right.
New fragrances coming.
A few of them here. Mountain Chalet, one of my favorites of the country.
You collection. Like that one? That one's
I do like that one. This is probably my new favorite, Juniper and Laurel.
It's a nice one. Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before the show. I was like, it's funny, when fragrances launch, it's almost been a year since I've had my hands in them, because like right now we're developing everything for next year. I mean, like already done. Like I've been working on that for 6 months. And when it launches, I will have already been working for 8 or 9 months on the following years. So it's like I get to experience these fragrances. It's funny that sometimes they'll get slotted into production and I'll see them coming off the belt. I'm like, ooh, let me grab one of those. Oh, I remember this. That was cool. That was a year ago. But for everybody else, it's brand new. But for me, it's like once you design it, you put it into the slot to get produced and marketed. It's like on to the next, because you can't stop. Because everybody here wants new. That's all that you guys buy is all the new stuff. You don't buy the old stuff anymore. You just want the new stuff. So we just got to keep making more and more and more. But it's fun. It keeps it interesting.
It does. So Tiffany here has asked, would you guys consider a jar recycling program with all the glass shortages?
That's a tough one. So recycling the jars and making another candle out of the same jar that was burned top to bottom and shipped from our facility to someone's home, you just don't know if there's micro cracks and fissures in the glass. How is that going to hold up to going through our production process and being filled a second time and then coming back home and shipping? There's a lot of work that would go into cleaning it, the labor to clean out the jar, to get it perfectly crystal clear, and all of that would be beyond expensive and probably eclipse the cost of buying a new candle.
Wow.
That's the tough part. That's the tough part. It's something my father thought about a long time ago, and they had a pilot program with it, and they scrapped it because you couldn't make it financially viable to do it. And the problem really comes in when you spend all the time and money to clean it, make it, and ship it, and then it breaks in shipping. And it's like, well, was that because it was already used and gone through the process, or what is it? Now you're eating the candle, the cost to remake the candle and clean the product, and then a third one. So it's just it's a tough thing. If anything, we'd probably be able to do lids. Lids could be a recycling thing that we could consider, but the problem is shipping. Shipping is so expensive.
It's ridiculous. It really is.
You would have to amass enough lids to send a case of them back to us to make it worth it. And then do they make it to us? Do half of them break in shipments? And then the cost of the shipping is probably going to eclipse the cost of the benefit of the recycling portion. It's a struggle. It's a struggle with that.
Hey, someone here want to know if there is more of a background story on Wolfsbane. If you can think that far back many years ago when you created it.
I know it was a floral fragrance, and I thought it was really interesting. It came to us from a perfuming class I went to in New Jersey. So I went there, and we had a whole floral presentation that was done. And one of the florals that was presented was Wolfsbane floral. And I'd never heard of it. I thought it was interesting. And I think that just kind of stuck in my head. And when I was developing the labels and the concepts, I just thought of Wolfsbane as more of like a werewolf and kind of like the scruff and wolf's mane, Wolfsbane kind of thing. It was just kind of in my head for that. And then we had the flower fragrance, and it was not really a spooky fragrance per se, but it was kind of fantasy. It wasn't exactly a direct representation of the floral. And it just kind of came together, and that's how it came to be. Yeah, Doug, Spooky Village is there. He said Wolfsbane's the strongest. I think he also refers to it as Devil's Baby Powder. Oh,
Devil's Baby Powder fragrance.
All right. I'm going to do a Devil's Baby Powder next year for Halloween. That's a good one. That's funny. Yeah, we've done fragrance development in all different ways. There's a technology that we have that if you really want to get an exact replica of something, there's this machine that we have, and it's a glass cloche, and it's a little funnel off the top. So it's a cloche that goes around, say, a flower or a muffin or a baked good or anything that you want. You put it around it, and there's a little tube that comes out of the top and a little pump and a carbon filter. And you suck air from the cloche through the carbon filter, and the fragrant material that you perceive gets trapped in the carbon filter, and then we burn it in a gas spectrometer, and we're able to take a reading of what the smell actually is and what the chemical makeup of that smell is, and then we can redesign and recreate that fragrance based on that chemical makeup. It's never going to be perfect, but it's really close. It's as close as you can scientifically get to recreating a fragrance, and you can do it with anything. It was really cool. I wanted to do one of my dad's classic cars, the interior smell of like the leather and things like that, and we did it, and we sent it off to be analyzed, and they're like, yeah, you cannot make this in a candle. This is poisonous. Like, you shouldn't even drive that. I was just like, oh gosh. It's all the glues and the stuff from the interior of the car, but yeah, it's wild.
Oh, geez. That's a question. Oh, are we gonna see more black bands? Speaking of your dad, are we gonna see more black bands?
Yes, absolutely. As soon as I can get enough of these jars to keep up with production, you will absolutely see them. That's kind of my limited edition launch for the country line. That's how I like to do them in the black band. So you'll see collections come out in black bands. Absolutely.
Did Yankee say anything to you about that? About using their black band?
It's not their black band. It's a completely different design.
Your black band.
Yeah, it's a different design, different weight on all the lines, different names, like literally every single component of our design is different from the original design. So as far as a trade dress situation, it's definitely reminiscent, but completely different on every level. So it's been abandoned for more than 20 years, and it's completely different. So nope, they've never said anything. We have a decent relationship. I was working with the president actually for a little while. I have a book that my father wrote, and it never got published. And I have the last manuscript of it, and I gave a copy to them. And my dad always wanted to sell it in the Yankee candle stores. It's kind of like his story. He really wanted it to be sold there. So we were working on that, and I think the pandemic kind of screwed that up a little bit, but I'm hopeful that we can work together to bring his story to life, because it's a really good book. It starts when he was about 2 years old and goes all the way through his life up until the point where he sold the company.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat. It's a great story. It was nice for me to have it, because I had read little tidbits of it, but I only ever read the whole book after he passed, which was kind of like a really nice thing for me to have.
What was it like growing up with your dad owning Yankee Candle?
Pretty cool. I mean, when I was young, my parents divorced when I was 2. So my mom lived in Ohio, and I went with her from 2 until about 10 years old. So I got to come back on weekends, and I always loved running through the factory. Everybody knew me. I was, running into the candle factory, making my own candles, going into the retail store. I mean, Santa Claus was in the retail store year round. I mean, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, as a kid, sure.
Hey, Santa, how you doing? Hey, Mick. I saw him every day. It was the coolest thing ever. It was great. He was a great dad. It was a nice experience growing up there, getting to be there. Kind of made my career. I mean, everybody has these little stories about when they were a kid, wanting to say like, oh, I'm going to be a fireman, or I'm going to be a whatever. I mean, I've got a letter from kindergarten or preschool where I wrote, I want to be a candle maker, just like my dad. And here I am, living the dream.
There you are.
Living the dream. Yeah, actually. Well, I'll find my copy of it, but there's a couple fun things over here. I don't know if we got to talk much about any of this, but this is the first prototype that was ever made of the Yankee house warmer jar. So this is actually not a label. This is a photo that was taken that was hand glued on, and the little metallic label is a label on top of the picture. And my dad hand cut all this together, and so it was the first one signed by him. So it's got number 1 and his signature on the bottom. It's kind of a cool thing, but came a long way from hand colored labels. I mean, this is how
oh my gosh,
how we used to do it. So you'd get these labels printed one color, so you'd come in just black, and then they would have label coloring parties with his mom and his dad and anyone he could convince to come in and use colored pencils and literally color in the inside of the labels. So I'm a long way in all these years, but as a final note, here's one of my favorite pictures of him, and he's got quite the sense of humor. You can see the face that he's making in that.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
that's the famous stove. That's still in your store, right?
Yes, and that's what I made my first ceremonial candle on, was that stove. He insisted that I make my first candle on the same stove that he made, so they fired it up, and I was able to melt enough wax, and we poured a ceremonial candle together on that.
Wow.
It's still in the store today.
That's special. Yeah.
Pretty cool. But I know you got to wrap it up, because we're geez, how long are we going on? Almost an hour?
Hour 15, actually. Yeah.
Oh boy, time flies when you're having fun. But hey, I really appreciated all the questions and getting to chat and catch up. And thanks for all the feedback. I'd love to do it again.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for hopping on. I know we were trying to do this for a little while now. So yeah, thank you for hopping on, and thanks everyone for joining us and making it a fun night.
No problem. My dog's going a little crazy over here. Norway, come here. Come here, buddy. Come say hi to everybody. This is Norway. This is my boy.
Hey, Norway.
He's a Labradoodle. Say hi. All right. Over here. Look over here. Here you go. All right. Well, anyway, thanks so much, and catch you next time.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.